Chess friends, I hope you are doing well. Today, I have a very intriguing and awesome chess game that was played between the Berserk chess engine and me. The Berserk chess engine is one of the top chess AIs, having crossed a 4000 Elo rating, and its performance is overwhelming. This game is particularly impressive because I sacrificed my bishop, and the AI demonstrates how to attack on the king side. So let's get started without wasting any time. I started the game with e4. And instead of playing c5 or e5, Berserk chose to play c6. After d4 and d5, we have e5 and the bishop comes out to f5 before considering e6 on the next move. Berkshire is very clear and determined in its plan, aiming to play queen b6 and c5 to break in the center. Therefore, after I developed my knight and bishop, and when he played h6 to prevent any piece from entering the g5 square, I castled, and he played knight d7, it became evident that he wanted to play c5 and queen b6 to pressure the center and the b2 pawn, so, I played a4, and as the knight moved e7, making the bishop passive and demobilizing it, I pushed the pawn again to prevent any sort of queen or knight entry. Playing b5 is also a very dangerous move because I can do en passant. When the knight moved to g6, I played a very crucial move in the opening. Can you guess what that move is? Try to think a little bit and use your brain. As you can see, the dark square bishop is locked in a cage, therefore, I moved my knight back to the e1 square because I intended to play g4 and f3 on the next move, locking down the bishop in a British jail where it cannot escape. Out of frustration, Berserk moved its knight back. I then played b4, and after a couple of moves, I pushed a6. You can see that this pawn has reached the final stretch, creating vulnerabilities for black. A few moves later, black even considered playing b5. Locking down the queenside position, you can see that all my pawns are on dark squares, and his dark square bishop is one of the most demobilized and frozen pieces. Both of my bishops, including the dark square and light square ones, can move freely on the board like butterflies flying in the sky. Once my knight reaches the c5 square, it will be very difficult for black to manage the position, therefore, I can push my pawns forward on the king side. As black's pieces are too far away from the bishop's safety, g4 comes on the board, and after the bishop retreats, a few moves later, when the queen moves to c8, I played a4 because I wanted to push a5 to open up the file. That's what I wanted in the game. No matter whether black castles or not, queenside castling is not possible because the rook has moved forward. Even if he tries to move to b6 to attack the pawn and win one, that's just Berserk's destiny. He wants to win a pawn. And I want to win his king. That's the difference between our mentalities and ideologies. Rook b6 and f5 are on the board. As you can see, I didn't recapture the pawn on the f5 square because it wasn't necessary. I played knight b3, giving him the opportunity to capture the pawn. Let's say black captures the pawn on the g4 square. I would then consider bishop takes g4. If black dares to play rook a6, it would be a completely vulnerable move for him, because I can capture the rook. After the capture, you can see that the vulnerabilities become evident. The knight is under attack, the pawn is under attack, and the knight can move to the c5 square. This creates a tactical opportunity for me. I can actually capture the knight on d7, and then play North Carolina 5, checking the king and winning the queen on the next move. The game will be in my hands. So, let me share a motivational quote for you. You are never powerless. The very fact that you're still standing and still fighting shows just how powerful you really are. Returning to the position, we see that capturing the pawn is not a good option. Therefore, after rook a6 and the captures occur, I played bishop d3, putting pressure on the f5 pawn. After exchanges on the g4 square, my queen attacks the knight, and regardless of whether black captures the bishop, it won't bring him any advantage. The bishops are like DNA in test tubes, and Berserk is a scientist trying to create a new living entity in his laboratory. If he decides to put chemicals on the g6 square, meaning if he dares to play knight g6, hoping to develop the bishop and castle, I can actually sacrifice my rook on the f7 square, forcing him to capture it. Afterward, I won't capture the knight because that's not my plan or my destiny. I have a bigger plan than his small brain and hopes. I will consider e6, forcing king to move back. Then I will pick up the knight with my bishop. Later on, I will capture your Dumbo knight too. At the end of the day, as you can see, that I will get 2 minor pieces for your Doniki rook along with the pass pawn. This position will be just winning for me, alright. Returning to the position, we see that playing knight g6 is not possible. After a couple of moves later, Berserk didn't consider f6. Instead, he played f5, and I didn't hesitate because knight takes f6 can happen. After h4 and e6 appear on the board, you can see that this e6 pawn is very crucial. Black didn't capture the pawn because my knight can jump to c5 in one move, I mean with one tempo. Knight f3 followed by knight e5 can also come. As the knight moves and the bishop arrives, queen takes e6 is now on the board. After a couple of moves, when knight c5 appears, knight exchanges follow, and the king retreats, followed by h5, you can see that black's king, along with all his pieces, is stuck and bombarded on the king side. The bishop has never moved, and all the pieces are like garbage, unemployed men in your company who are just liabilities. The queen retreats to the c8 square, the rook comes in, and then knight e5 follows. The knight is dominating the position, as you can see. So, as the queen moves here, we have queen to h4, dominating the diagonal, and at the same time, you can see that all of black's pieces are just paralyzed. Out of frustration, black played g5, and this move is very committal because en passant is possible, but I didn't play it since that square is well protected. Instead, I played a very interesting move. Bishop takes g5, I sacrificed my bishop on the g5 square, like a gangster sacrifices to gain more advantages in the long run. After the exchanges occurred, the queen gave a check, and as the bishop moved, I played king to f2, the e-file was dominated by my rook. And the rook could also come to the g1 square to take control of the file. The king moved, and I played knight takes c6, putting more pressure on the knight and queen simultaneously. As the rook moved, I played queen takes e7, followed by a queen exchange. At the end of the day, I had an outside passed pawn, and after a couple of moves, you can see that I promoted it into a new queen. I ended up with an extra rook, and this position was completely winning for me. Black couldn't do anything. I had 3 big pieces, and later on, I even checkmated him. So, this game was very authentic and amazing. I hope you enjoyed it very much. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Wishing you all the best. Bye bye, take care, and see you soon.